Here's the axle out of the Sidekick as I purchased it from the other competitor in the Cheap Truck Challenge. So it's a Samurai front axle that you can see is obviously bent. I was able to get the short side out. It was broken. There's the crack right there. But the long side is stuck in the housing, and I think it's because it's rubbing and it's just bound up between being in the splines, rubbing on the housing, and being stuck in the knuckle. So I'm gonna try and kind of maybe top it out a little bit, but if that doesn't work, I'm gonna cut into the housing and maybe open it up so that I can try and get that axle out. So let's see how it goes. So I think what happened is the knuckle ball bent so much that it's binding up down here on the bottom part of the Burfield bell. So I'm gonna have to, I don't know, maybe like slice through here without cutting into the axle, and then maybe bend the ball back down so that I can slide the axle out. But I'm sure you can see it's not happy. It feels like all the rub is down here, so I'll work on that. I thought it was hung up on the bell, but it's not. It's definitely stuck in the tube. So keep cutting. Alright, now that the axle shafts are out of the diff, I can go ahead and pull the third member out. So we'll pull all those bolts and get that pulled out, because we're going to reuse that, because we know the gear ratio matches the back. While it's out, I'll measure what it is and see if it's 411 or what. Doesn't honestly feel that good. It feels a little notchy in the pinion bearing. We'll probably just run it though, since this is kind of budget beater, and that's the front diff that we can unlock the hubs on the highway, but we'll see when we get it out. Figure out the gear ratio that you've got. Sometimes they'll stamp it or etch it right in the perimeter of the ring gear and you get lucky. I can't find a part number anywhere on this thing. It was also fairly rusty at one spot, so I don't see it in there, but you know, you can just do math too. So we'll just go ahead and mark the ring gear right here. We'll mark the pinion head right there. We'll count how many teeth are on the pinion, how many teeth are on the ring, divide, and we'll come up with a gear ratio. Let's see what we got. counted 41 teeth on the ring gear and 8 on the pinion. So did quick math on that. Okay, so that would be 513 gears. So the pinion spins 5.13 times for every time that the ring gear or axle shafts spin 1 time. While the third member's soaking in the solvent tank, I'm gonna get started on the new housing that I got from Amber Turner. So Amber was nice enough, now that she's running those Sammy 1-tons, aka Toyota axles. She gave me this Samurai housing. I picked it up at Hammers. So I picked up this axle truss, the knuckle ball gussets that weld in, these little 3/8 plate guys that go in there. And I got some perches from Rough Stuff Housing, 2-inch wide, because it's a spring over application. So I got to cut the spring under perches off, get this U-bolt retainer off the top, and get this whole thing cleaned up. I mean, obviously it's kind of grungy and stuff, but it looks pretty straight. So get it cleaned up and get it ready to weld on. Not much worse than cleaning up axles, but got the old perches off, got everything cleaned up. So I'll get everything wire wheeled up for the truss. It's gonna go across the top. Of course, the spring over perches and the knuckle ball gussets. So get this whole thing cleaned up, get ready for welding. Took the truss and just laid it on there, ran a quick Sharpie line around it. Doesn't fit real great. It's kind of par for the course for aftermarket stuff, so looks like it's got a little extra material in here. So I'm gonna clean all the paint and rust where I marked it up, and then I'll go ahead and get it fitting good, and then start welding it on. And I'll just weld it real slow because I'm not gonna like pre-tension this thing to keep it from warping and pulling. So I'll just weld little pieces real slow. What you don't want to do is weld it too fast. Everything will pull towards the weld, which means it'll actually pull this long side of the axle housing. It'll pull it up towards the truss. So I'm gonna do little bits here and there. I ended up fast forwarding a little bit here and just got a bunch of work done, but I'll catch you guys up and show you where we're at. So we've got both knuckleball gussets on. Those go on the bottom side of the axle and keep hard hits from hopefully pulling the knuckle where it's pretty narrow upwards. So we've got those on both sides. We've got the truss too on. I like all of it except for this weld over here didn't come out so good, but I didn't use, a lot of people preload axles when they put trusses on. I didn't do that. I didn't want to rig up a bottle jack and a chain and a bunch of stuff to try to hold it straight. So I just went ahead and tacked it and started stitch welding it really slowly. And I think it'll be fine. And then I also added this diff armor here. Just welded it in 3 places just to keep it on there, and some frontal hits, because this is the one that came off the Samurai, and you can see how caved in it got from just hitting a few rocks on the trails. So we want to avoid that. Yeah, there we go. So axles all done here. I gotta get, it's all gooey from the anti-spatter spray, but I'll get it cleaned up the rest of the way and get a coat of paint on it. And then the only thing left are the spring perches, but I don't know, there's a width criteria there, and then there's also a rotation to get the caster angle right. So I'll have to mock it up into place in the vehicle, then tack weld those on, and then I can take it back out and burn those in. Gonna get started tonight putting the axle back together. Got a fresh bead of RTV on there. Diff's all cleaned up, so let's get this thing slammed in there. And all these bolt holes go all the way through into the housing, so we'll go ahead and put a little bit of this right stuff on the threads. That way none of these things leak. We can go ahead and put axle seals in it and start getting the knuckles assembled. I didn't film the process. It ended up being really frustrating, but I figured I'd do a little explanation of what we got here. So this is the stock Burfield bell on the stub shaft for the Samurai axle, and one of the common weaknesses is because they're so thin, as they get stressed, they'll crack right here, like one of the axles I took out. So the aftermarket makes these what they call Burfield rings, and the idea is you just press it over the bell and it just increases the thickness. However, these bells were too big a diameter, so they don't even stand up in the knuckle. Didn't realize that till I pressed it on, so I had to get creative and chuck the entire axles up in the lathe and turn the OD down a bit. And then also had to modify the last little step right in here so that it would press on. But anyway, got those pressed on, so they're a little bit reinforced, a little bit thicker. Not sure if that'll make the difference for me or not, but let's get going with axle assembly. I need to load the Burfields up with grease before I put them back in. I don't know if there's a right way to do it, but I just put the needle tip on my grease gun, and I'm just gonna inject a bunch of grease down in there and kind of move it all around until can't seem to fit any more grease in it. Is the red light flashing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Flashing.
Alright, then it's working.
What's that greasy stuff, guys?
It's grease.
Grease?
It's exactly what it is. No, it's lubricant.
It looks like it's a glue for parts. Ow!
Not sure what to tell you, can I? Working on stuff? Does that like...
Hey, you didn't ask for my help.
I know, just like picture the angle the lens is at.
It's maybe too high.
And tilt it down for me.
I'm not.
I'm gonna have to hold my head part two.
I'm not that spicy. It's just one.
Let me see. Is this the test run?
We're just getting footy. If it's no good, we won't use it. Man, I don't know what these things are made of. Some serious stuff. All right, so we got the seal and the little felt pad on. Got the races in. Got the inner axle seal in. So we're gonna go ahead and add the axle that we've already greased up. And put a bit of grease on our seal. Get that engaged. Maybe. There we go. Yep. And then we'll drop our top bearing in. Then we gotta put the bottom bearing in and hold it. Knuckle over. Okay, there we go. So now we'll get the new kingpins out and work on, use these shims here between the kingpin itself and the knuckle to adjust preload on those upper and lower bearings. And the idea is to get a certain amount of rotational resistance or preload on those two bearings. So it takes a little bit of trial and error. I'll get that going. So this kit from Roadless Gear comes with these new kingpins that are all machined one piece. The old ones didn't look all that worn, but this kit came with these, so we'll use them. Rust isn't a huge problem here, but I'm a big believer in anti-seize anywhere that you got these metal on metal surfaces down the road. So the other side ended up only wanting a shim on one end. Come on. I'll get that in a second. But so I ended up with just one shim on the bottom, and I was able to get a good preload on it. So we'll see if this side's the same. Alright, let's get that in. It's fighting me. Here's the bearing. So let's figure that out for a second. Why will this not go in? This kingpin does not fit in that bearing. Is it a kingpin problem or a bearing problem? Aha. That would be a kingpin problem. What about this bearing? So we got some sort of fitment issue here. Must be just enough lip on this thing that's hanging up. Not surprised, but I never cease to be amazed. So here's a factory kingpin. You can see the reading there. Would that be 75 plus 15, 590? Yeah, measures 590. Here's one of theirs that fits, also measures 590, just under. And then here's the one that doesn't fit, 592. So there you go, quality control. This one's 2000's too big, so I'll just reuse one of the old kingpins that looks fine. It's a welded design. You know, what are you gonna do? Aftermarket parts. Let's try that again. What's up, lady? What you doing? Use my wife's old fish scale here to check turning force. It's supposed to be 4 pounds. So that one right now is measuring like 6 to get going. They're new bearings, new races. Kind of think that's gonna be good because I feel like if I add a shim to the top one, it's gonna get too loose, but let's try it. This one measures about 19 thousandths. This will be the thinnest one I got. Run this. Call it good. I don't think the road manners of this Sidekick are going to be very good anyway, but I really don't want it more difficult to drive on the road, and I feel like if the steering was too sticky, that would be a problem. There we go, just about 3 pounds. So it's good. It's within the 2 to 4 that everybody suggests. So we got a little bit of grease on the bronze bushing, even though it's probably self-lubricating. A little grease on there just to fight corrosion. Spindle on. Caliper bracket with the offset inboard. All right, let's get to our wheel bearings. GoPro battery died last night, which is kind of unfortunate, but got the rest of the axle put back together, got the hubs on it and everything. So now we've got the axle mocked up under the Sidekick, and I have to do a couple things before I can tack weld the perches on, and that's going to include getting it get the caster, which is if you drew a straight line through both kingpins, that would be the degree of inclination rolled back, which the kingpin angle is what helps provide good handling on the road. And we don't want to go too much though and dip the pinion, which you can see is already kind of a low issue there. And then I've got to get the perches the right dimension left to right, so we're trying to get everything centered up and get the angle right, and then I'll tack weld those perches on out here with my little 110 welder, and then I'll pull the axle back out real quick and weld them up with the big 220, and then throw some paint on it and get it in there for good. Axle is mocked up in place. I've got the spring perches lined up where I want them, and just got a couple of tack welds. So I spent some time, just tack welded the perches on. Took my time, made sure I got the axle centered left to right in the vehicle, and then spent some time. It's not at right height right now, but made sure we got some good positive caster. That way the thing's got good road handling manners. So now I'm gonna pull the axle out, take it in the garage, weld those perches up real good. Okay, well that one fell off, but we know exactly where it goes. We'll double check the angle against this one. I think that'll be all right. Got the axle very loosely bolted in place. These spring perches have 3 holes. There's a center hole and then one on each side. So if you want to move the axle forward or back about 1 inch, you can. So I'm just going to leave it loose for now, start getting the steering mocked up, and see if we've got any issues with clearance. Okay, so we got caliper brackets. They also hold the steering arms on this thing. So I'm gonna work on getting the steering set up next. I only have 2 caliper bolts. The other ones were the wrong thread, so I gotta go to the hardware store and get a couple more bolts, whatever fine pitch metric that is, And then again, everything's still loose because I need to get it mocked up. I also need to figure out if I have the right hardware for the drive shaft. So I'm just gonna work on little odds and ends for next little bit here, and that way hopefully I can make one run. I gotta go get gear oil for the axle. So getting there. The only thing we're missing is shock absorbers. They're still getting rebuilt. It actually came with some nice Fox shocks on it when I got it, so those are getting rebuilt. So I won't really go anywhere far, but I'll probably go cruise the neighborhood here and see how it does. So there's only two things I don't like so far about what I see, and that's the steering linkage right here. It's only got couple fingers until it hits, so it doesn't really have much up travel. The other thing I don't like is how flat the springs are just at ride height, and this looks like a weak spot to me where it might bend. So I'm actually already thinking that I've got all these other leaf springs. I think I might take this leaf off and add it to the pack I've got. So I'm gonna measure that up and see if that works, but I'm gonna drive it a little bit first, see how it does. Are complete garbage. Pedal goes all the way to the floor. It barely stops. Okay, turns right. Rear is definitely welded.